Welcome to Bigger Possibilities, a podcast from Schultz Williams exploring what's possible for nonprofit organizations and the world through leadership, purpose, and progress. My name is Craig Shelley. I have the privilege of being the CEO here at Schultz Williams. Today's guest has spent his career asking one of the most important questions in our sector. What does it take for nonprofit organizations to trust and to earn trust and create lasting impact? More than 2 decades leading the Better Business Bureau Wise Giving Alliance, now serves as the president and CEO of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Art Taylor has helped shape conversations around ethics, accountability, fundraising, leadership across the profession. It's at AFP where I've been able to see his leadership up close. I am just finished a term as our New York City chapter president, and Art's just been a great addition to our team and a fantastic leader. So Art, welcome.
Thank you, Craig. It's great to be here and really looking forward to what we do here in this time we have together.
We'll have some fun. Well, let's just kind of maybe start with some softballs, right? Like, how did you get here? Like, what shaped you as a leader? You look back over your career, you've done lots of fun stuff, been lots of great situations. What sort of really shaped it? What experiences most shaped the leader you are today?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with my mother, who raised 2 boys as a single parent with an 8th grade education. She was orphaned basically at the age of 13, came to Philadelphia from rural Virginia and made a way for herself. She worked 37 years in the kitchen of a department store and taught us the value of hard work, consistency, persistence, honesty, and love. And I think my brother and I were the beneficiaries of that. And I would think we carry that as best we can into every activity, including leadership roles and family, friendships, and so forth. So I would give her a lot of credit for the person that I am, and maybe even the leader that I am. I also think to the institutions that helped shape me, Craig, the YMCA, my church, other civic organizations that I was connected to as a youngster, where there were people who had values that we could align with and who helped raise us, that also played an important role to me being a part of the nonprofit community now in my career. Seeing and knowing the effect and impact that those experiences had on me as a youngster now have given me sort of a responsibility to want to give back. And so I come to this work truly understanding the impact that it can have. And I want to see to it that I'm able to deliver some of that.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I mean, and I think we often don't think enough to really understand the correlation between like our parents and our childhood and, the leaders that we become, because, right, I'm also single mom and we probably wanted for many a thing, but I wouldn't have noticed that on most days. And the one thing that I never wanted for was like the push and the confidence and like, hey, you can do whatever you want to set your mind to. And that's certainly true. And I wonder, for me, the big institution as a kid was, outside of school was really the Boy Scouts, and the same thing. Like that was my introduction to the nonprofit sector. And so much of that value probably was because I was, growing up with a single mom and just sort of was exposed to lots of things she didn't have the ability to do. So that thread is a good one.
You get it. You get it.
Yeah. You think back, you're like, oh, maybe I was always going to end up here, right? But think about that, right? Like, so you've ended up in what I would maybe consider these, backbone organizations, right? The Giving Wise Alliance, the Wise Giving Alliance, now AFP. What attracted you to those roles? Like, how did you first kind of get into this part of the sector?
Boy, it's so fascinating because I look at my life now, and now I can look back and say, so many experiences leading up to this now make sense as to why I'm there. So I started out, Craig, in public accounting. When I graduated college, I got a job working in an accounting firm. And one of the requirements was that you give pro bono services. And so I started volunteering with an organization in town and did some voluntary work as an accountant. But then I was also assigned to do audits of some nonprofit organizations, one of which was this group called Opportunities Industrialization Centers of America. And I did the audit for a while, and then later on, they hired me to be their CFO. And from there, I was able to become the CEO. So at the age of 30, 31 or so, I was the CEO of this national job training program, which sort of set the stage for everything to come after. And when I look back at how I became the CEO of the Wise Giving Alliance, it was because I had experience working in business and in the nonprofit sector. I had the financial acumen, and I had also completed law school, which gave me somewhat of a policy understanding. And so the Wise Giving Alliance was really about all of those things: developing standards, dealing with legal issues, managing the financial affairs, helping organizations think about how best to manage the financial affairs of their work. And so all of it made sense. And through the Wise Giving Alliance, obviously, I connected with lots of organizations. And what we were doing was also trying to advise groups on how to be ethical in their fundraising, which connected me with AFP's ethics committee. For people who don't know, AFP is really about two things. One is doing fundraising excellently, but also doing it ethically. And so I served a term, several terms actually, on the AFP ethics committee and got to see how important ethics is in fundraising. So then this job opens up, and I'm termed out. I've been termed out of that job for about 7-8 years. And someone comes along and says, would you be interested in this job? And what really took me to the point where I said, yeah, I'll consider it, is I have been working with this thing called the Generosity Commission. And the Generosity Commission was established to look at this decline in donor participation that we've experienced over the last 25 years now, and it continues, where more money is being raised, but from a smaller percentage of Americans who give. And so we're trying to figure out, what does that actually mean? How does it affect our society? What's it mean for the nonprofit sector and so forth? And when this opportunity came up, I had been working with this group, and I've been thinking that, well, some of this has to do with maybe how we think about fundraising. And wouldn't this be an interesting time to deal with that as the head of AFP? And so I applied, and the rest is history. So, a lot of what I've done in my past life sort of led me to this. And I try to tell people who ask me to mentor them, you can't really plan this. Your life just sort of will shape in a certain way that leads you to things. When a lot of times I think people think, well, we can just plan it out. We're going to do this, then I'm going to do that. It doesn't work like that. I was supposed to be an accountant, and here I am, the head of the Association of Fundraising Professionals.
That's funny, right? I feel like somewhere around 25 or 26, I stopped trying to figure out what I was going to do in 5 years. Because whatever I was shooting for, where I ended up was so much better, right? I kept finding, and I think that's a part of this profession that people don't think enough about. But like you mentioned, you're kind of taking over the leadership at OIC, and you were 30, 31, right? So my CEO job in the sector, I was 30, 31. Right. And it's like, that wouldn't have happened if I was an accountant, or, it's the road to sort of responsibility, for better or worse, is a quick one in our sector.
Yeah. You can get opportunities, and if you're effective, you can do well, and you can make mistakes too. Of course, I made a lot of mistakes, boy. 31. I don't know about you, but I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned a lot. And I think people should consider that when they consider a job, right? You want to be at a place where, especially if you're developing, where if you make a mistake, it's not fatal, and it doesn't, tank your career. Yeah. You want people who can kind of accept that, yeah, you've made a mistake and you're going to learn from it. Now you're going to do better. Because if you don't have that opportunity, it's hard to grow.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate. I had lots of people give me plenty of grace at that age of things I thought I knew for sure were the way to go, and I absolutely was wrong. So that's a good segue. Right? You think about mistakes you made. Like, what are some things maybe you got wrong about leadership in those first couple tries as you were learning?
Yeah, so I think early on, I had my hat on as the accountant, as a CEO.
Yeah.
Which can be challenging because you're looking at the numbers. You're looking at everything through a financial lens and not necessarily a people lens. And so you look at things and you say, well, the logic says if we do this, it's less money or we're going to make more money. But if the people you're leading aren't really supportive of that, you have problems. And I think what I learned is that you have to pay attention to the people first, then look at the numbers, or at least look at them both together. So that's one thing. The second thing is to just trust your judgment. And a lot of times you're going to get things wrong, but you learn to trust your judgment when you're processing decisions the right way. And by that, I mean, there are some moments where you kind of have to make the decision because time is of the essence and the decision needs to be made right now. But most of the time, you want to try to get as much information and gather as much insight from those around you who understand the work and the decision and who are going to be impacted by that decision as you can before you make that decision. And I've found that when I do that, I feel a lot better about my decisions. Even though I may make a decision that everyone doesn't agree with, knowing that I've considered everyone's thoughts about it makes me feel a lot better about the decision I'm making. So I think those are probably two things. The last thing is to begin living a little bit in the future as well as the present. And I didn't quite know how to do that, Craig, until I would say maybe 15 years ago. Because I was at the Wise Giving Alliance. We were doing really well as an organization, but I was starting to feel that things around us were shifting, and I didn't understand what it meant. And skipping over a lot of detail, I was able to connect with some futurists. And one of my mentors now, and good friend, is a guy named Bob Johansson. And the people at the Institute taught me how to do forecasting or the techniques of forecasting. And boy, that really changed my life because I was able to create scenarios about how things might be in the future, how to take developments that we're seeing presently and project them out into the future. And it helped me think about our prospects differently as we would go forward and what we needed to do today to be ready. So it was really having this, what I call future back thinking. Think about 10 years out, what might happen if certain things came to light, and what does that mean for what we need to do today? It gives you a whole different perspective than future forward. Future forward is, you're thinking about if we continue to do the things we're doing now, what's the impact of that?
Right.
Where in the future, you're thinking about, well, if certain things were to go to scale, what does that mean for me today? So it's a different way of thinking, and I think both are important, but I didn't have that second lens, and it's made me much better as a thought leader and as a leader in general.
Yeah, and I think, right, it's hard for leaders, particularly I think in the nonprofit sector, to sort of think that far out because it's like, well, I'm just trying to figure out how to make payroll next month. And you want to figure out what things look like in 10 years. But like, if you don't do that, and I was thinking that's a great point around like still acting as an accountant when you became the CEO, like whatever, it's hard, whatever job you come into, your first CEO position, you weren't a CEO. So it's like you carry something, I came in as a fundraiser and made every decision. Right. What would the fundraiser do? It's hard to sort of separate that. And then it does dictate the speed at which you make decisions, how you make decisions, where you take input, when you don't, and all those things, when you decide versus you let somebody else decide. Those are all challenges. I think for new leaders in particular, but all of us have to kind of think about that and be cognizant of it all the time. Let's talk a little bit about sort of this idea you've often spoken about, right? Trust, accountability, a lot of that, the Wise Giving Alliance, ethics and AFP. How do those ideas translate for leaders, like into everyday leadership, like those concepts of trust and accountability? How do you bring that into your day-to-day, or should other leaders bring into their day-to-day?
Well, I think you should start your day making sure that you do nothing that will have you on the front page of the New York Times. Now that's a pretty big, pretty easy one, hopefully for most organizations. But how do you operationalize that is the question. And there are several ways of looking at it. One is to consider that you are humans, that you're going to make mistakes, but that you want to at least be considering how your decisions impact people, right? How your work impacts people. And know that as a leader, most of the decisions you make are going to be ones where they're not really decisions, they're kind of dilemmas, right? If I say yes to this, it's going to make some people happy, but it's going to make a lot of people unhappy. And usually there's no getting around that. Sometimes we try to just manage the dilemma without making a decision, right? We try to manage it in a way where, okay, we make the decision maybe knowing that it's going to impact others negatively, but we try to spend a lot of time and sit with the people who are being negatively impacted to at least hope that they understand and we can find ways maybe to accommodate them for what we did. That's the managing side of it. But it also can be ethical, and it's the same kind of thing. So you're a fundraiser, for instance. If some nefarious figure is willing to give you a ton of money for something that you're trying to do in your organization, but that nefarious figure is such that many people in your organization won't be happy with that, what do? We call it tainted money, right? We call it tainted money. You got to have a policy around it. The key is, well, what is your policy? Again, it's an ethical question. Should we accept this money or not? Some organizations will say, yes, you should accept it. Others will say, hell no, don't accept it. But the question is, have you thought about this in advance and developed some type of policy around it so that whether people like it or not, you can say that you've debated it, you've discussed it, and this is the decision that we've made around these kinds of gifts. And you can recount the ethical issues again and again and again. I'm just naming one. There are myriads of them. But the question is, how are we from a policy standpoint so that you can operationalize ethical behavior within your organization? For some, it may not be ethical to accept it. Others, it may be. But what's it for your organization, and have you thought about the pros and cons, and are you willing to live within that policy? From time to time, the policy may change.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's it. I think it's really trying to anticipate some of the ethical dimensions of your work, sitting with people for whom decisions around this matter, and coming up with policies, procedures, and practices that make those decisions ones that you can live with.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and as a leader, right, you have to structure things, recognizing you're not in every conversation in every room. So how do I give everyone a framework to come to the same decision that makes sense for our organization? And it's funny, that point around wake up every morning, don't do anything to get on the cover of the New York Times. I had a board chair when I was executive or CEO, and first, he takes over, he gets elected. We sit down a week later for breakfast, and the first thing he says is, "Don't ever embarrass me." And at the time, I took it as what are you, a jerk? What's your deal? And I've like come to realize like that's what he meant. He meant like you can't about like wake up every morning, first thing, don't do anything really stupid. After that, we can figure out what comes next. When you think around like the next generation of nonprofit leaders, and before we started recording, talked a little bit around like how do you get more people to come into fundraising, things like that. Like, how do you think about that? Like, what obligation do we have as current leaders to help the next generation and develop the next generation, and what should we be doing to do that?
Yeah. I think the first is listen, because, I've been doing this work a long time, and the entire context of my experience is very different than what young people are dealing with today. And I still get people asking me for advice, which I'm happy to give. But I don't know sometimes how relevant my experience is with what they're dealing with. I continue to believe that values matter, and that you should understand your purpose in life and try to get as much alignment with the things you do and your positions on things as your purpose can give you, right? But the environment in which young people are entering the workforce today is entirely different. There was a time when I could actually think about what I wanted to do maybe 10 years from now, even though I had no clue as to whether I would actually be doing it, but I actually knew that there would be lawyers and there would be accountants 10 years from now.
Yeah,
but a young person today can't even predict what jobs will be available. My son is a brilliant technician. He works for one of the large companies in entertainment doing coding. And he's making a lot of money, very successful. But we talk all the time about what his son will be doing. And he says, Dad, I have no clue, because the work I'm doing, I'm almost certain won't be around when he gets to be 20. So, and he's making a great living doing it. So what do we even tell them? So I think values are important, but the particulars around what you will be doing or how to even advise people on the skills that they should be developing is just all up in the air right now. So I lean back to this question of purpose. And the reason I say that is, think about why you're in a particular job. And we hear lots of young people today say, I'm not happy in this job. Like it's something new. I had some jobs I wasn't so happy with too, right?
Yeah.
And, you at some point realize I'm here for a reason. So like in my case, when I started out in public accounting, I was there to learn, hopefully get a CPA and move on. I knew I wasn't going to be a partner in that firm, but I knew I could make a decent living if I got a CPA license. I had a purpose.
Yeah.
And even in difficult situations where you don't like your boss, you don't like the work, you don't even like the organization, but they gave you an opportunity to work, you take the job, then ask yourself, what's my purpose for being here? Is it to learn? Is it to contribute something? Is it to make money? Is it to position me for the next job? Whatever that purpose is, that makes it easier for you to stay and endure the pain.
Yeah. That's a great way to think about it.
If you don't have that purpose, then you're like, I'm out. And I think young people may be leaving too soon.
Yeah. No, I think
not
you're right.
having understood. Yeah. You can't take a job and not get anything out of it. You have to get something out of it.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. I've had like mostly great bosses, but if I'm being honest, I may have learned the most from the one or two I had that weren't, right? Like, and to your point, like if I had left those today, you probably leave that job in 6 or 7 months, and I wouldn't have gotten what I got out of it if I did that, right? Like, so the misery actually has paid dividends, much greater down the line.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one piece of advice that I would offer people. And of course, there's always you got to keep learning, right? You have to keep learning. You have to keep trying new things. Boy, I would not have dreamed back then that I would be doing some of the things I do today. But the environment is such that you can do things. We can host podcasts. Who'd have thought like we or edit video, and I would never have thought that I could do those kinds of things. Build apps with AI. So you continue to learn, right? And if you're doing that, if your values are aligning with the work that you're doing or you intend to do, you're continuing to learn, then I think you're going to be fine in life, regardless of the fears that many of us have that categories of work will be disappearing as a result of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great, right? It's a great way to think about it. And also great, like, you started with like, you need to listen and learn from new leaders as much as they need to listen and learn from us, because like their contexts are just so different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have this framework that I think of a lot of, like how the role of a nonprofit CEO has evolved a great deal over the years. Like, how do you think about that, right? Like when you think, what's changed over the last, say, decade from being a nonprofit CEO?
The speed of decision making, right? I think that we are being, so much is coming at us so fast, right? And we're asked to respond almost immediately to everything that happens. That's different. It doesn't mean that things are less intense or more intense than they used to be, but the number and volume of things that we have to deal with, I think, have ramped up substantially. So if you think back to when I started in a job as a CEO, there was no internet, right? So, there was no like email. We weren't working much past 5. If you did, you took a file home with you or something. Maybe made a few phone calls. But today we're on like constantly.
Yeah.
We're always on. And so there's always an opportunity to connect with someone, to email someone, to work on something that you need to have access to learn something. It's nonstop. And that creates more decision making. One of the biggest changes, from an operations standpoint is look at how much more money we're spending today on technology than we did back then.
Yeah.
When I was at the Wise Giving Alliance, we were one of the first charity websites, give.org.
Wow.
Right? You could never get that today, right? So we were one of the first.
Right.
Give.org. And we thought we were doing something, which was great, right? But we have that organization, when I left, had gone from almost nothing on technology to about 40% of its budget.
Yeah.
Where is it ending? I don't know. But I think the degree to which CEOs need to understand a wide range of things to some level has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Because the roles that we're hiring people for continue to change, and they're not up to speed. So like at AFP, my team will laugh because when I have one-on-one meetings with people, I'm teaching them how to use different AI tools. I'm sitting down like, let's spend 10 minutes, thinking about how we can change how we do this program using AI differently. And let me show you what I've actually developed. See if it can work for you. So we're doing that kind of thing as a CEO that maybe we wouldn't have done before. I don't know, but that's how I see it. Yeah. So, you can't as a CEO anymore just tell people, hey, we want to go in this direction. People also want to know, well, show me what the value is of going in that direction. And if you do that effectively, they will go. If you don't do it effectively, they'll move slowly, and you'll probably not get there. They'll wait you out, so to speak, and that's not good. Yeah. So I think that's probably it. I mean, I think there's just the pace of things is so much more rapid, and the fact that we're always on makes your role as a leader in an organization a lot more challenging. And the last thing I'll say on this, the way we deal with it, though, is to do our best to make decision-making as distributed as possible.
Yeah.
We have to empower people to take on more than they thought they could, and to make decisions that before would be, channeled through some funnel where you were at the top. The centralized decision-making doesn't work as well in a fast-paced environment. You have to have people who are comfortable with decision-making, know how to process decisions. And as a CEO, that can be uncomfortable too, because you don't have control over everything.
Yeah.
If you're like a control-oriented person, you're going to lose some of that control. But if you're not enabling your people to make decisions quickly, you're going to lose too. So there has to be, you have to live with that tension, I guess, Craig, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, it's like, that's why I think values, culture, who you hire becomes so much more important, because it's like you're going to have to push the decisions away from you. And so you better make sure you understand how they're going to make those decisions and with what value and who they are. So yeah, 100%. That's been a great conversation. Let's start to maybe kind of get to the end here so I can get you out of here. I don't want to overspend your time, but maybe like let's just end here. Maybe what's the best leadership advice you've ever received?
The best leadership advice. Just do your best. Just do your best. And I'm going back to my mother, who would always say that. Just do your best. Now think about it. It sounds pretty simple. Just do your best. But here's the thing about that. If you're doing your best and things don't work out, then you shouldn't feel bad about it. You did your best. I mean, you're going to feel somewhat bad because you wanted the thing to work, right?
Right. What else could you have done? Right.
What else could you did your best. You did the due diligence. You did your homework. You gave it everything you had. It just didn't work.
Yeah. I love that.
And if it works, that's even better, because now you can say, everything we did was the right thing and we got the result.
Exactly.
But if you're not doing your best and it works out, you also know that maybe there was some luck in this.
Yeah.
We got away with something.
Or what else?
We got away with something
better. Right.
We could have done better.
Yeah.
And if you're not asking yourself that, could I have done better? Then you're not being honest about where the growth opportunities are. And so as a leader, being able to celebrate wins when you didn't do your best, but also face the reality that you could have done better and we're going to get better. We got one here.
Yeah.
That's, I think, really an important and essential element of leadership. So I would give my mother credit for that. People think when you say, just do your best, that's it. No, there's some nuance in that I think is really important for a leader to internalize and to use to make their work and the organization's work better.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great place to end. My version of that, I say to my kids all the time and learned early in my career was, the only thing you can control is how hard you work, right? Like everything else, there's a lot of other variables, but no one's ever going to outwork me. And if no one ever, like, that's the same. You did your best. That's all you could have done. But anyway, I really appreciate the time, Art. Thank you for your perspective. More importantly, your decades of leadership has just strengthened our profession so much and continues to do so. You always have challenged all of us to think beyond the success of our own organizations and really think about the sector. I'm so grateful for that. I appreciate you joining us today. Thanks everyone for listening to Bigger Possibilities. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe, share it with others who you think will care, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.